We all good to go, Jen? We good to go? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll be holding a special called meeting for Public Works on July 21st we'll open the meeting at 3:02 p.m. Discussion today will be water management, the Water Management Task Force, and I'd like to defer to either Director Johnson or Engineer Collins on the information about the special called meeting today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to defer to the mayor who will open the discussion.
Thank you, Director Johnson and Councilman Kuliu. Thank you for calling this meeting. We're adopting best practices for COVID. Please note that Councilman Kuliu has medical reason for having his mask down. The rest of us will have our masks down, and we're more than 6 feet socially distant at any time. First, I want to acknowledge the committee members. We've been meeting since April, at least once a week, in addition to everybody else's normal duties. First and foremost, a number of meetings. Councilman Kuliu participated. Thank you. Kristen Saban, Chief of Staff. Director Jack Johnson, Service Director. Our City Engineer, Dan Collins. Our Assistant City Engineer, Mark Schmitzer. AECOM Engineering Consultant, Scott Bells. Mike Vano from our own Sewer Department, and Sue Oyster from our Service Department. And our Technical Advisor, Mr. Pete Boyd of the West Creek Conservancy. At this time, I'd also like to thank members of the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District for their partnership. While not members or official technical advisors, we did review our presentation with them in its entirety last week. And I'll paraphrase, they were pretty impressed with our efforts and glad we're doing this. In addition, I'd like to thank the Sewer District for their work in restoring the floodplain down on Donna, Ray, and Forest Overlook. That's a major part of the regional effort to combat water issues. When we got this group together, we put together a mission statement. You know, you got to set your goals. Why are we getting together? And I'm on page 4 for those of us that have the presentation. Our mission was to develop short and long-term plans to remediate water-related issues. Identify and prioritize specific projects that will lead to the rehabilitation of the sewer systems and other control measures to minimize flooding. Provide public education platforms. Identify potential partnerships and synergies with other agencies. And last but not least, research funding and economic assistance programs. Before I turn it over to my directors, I'm going to give a brief introduction of what all we were looking at and a bit of status on the sewers. Our existing sewer system and drainage system has an age that exceeds 55 years old. Throughout the last 3 months, we've identified 4 major components of our management system for review. We reviewed the preventative maintenance of our storm and sanitary sewers. Primary objective of a sewer preventive maintenance program is to minimize resident inconveniences that are caused by storm and sanitary sewer issues and to protect the residents' investment in this essential infrastructure utility. The second group we reviewed was the rehabilitation of the city's stormwater control measures. Retention and detention basins allow us to manage stormwater runoff to lessen flooding and downstream erosion during water events. The third component, improve, repair the city's existing storm and sanitary sewers. Preventative maintenance from time to time must be supplemented with targeted actions/improvements to address changing needs, emergent issues, and address the aging infrastructure. The fourth, address public and private property infiltration and inflow, better known as I&I, and cross-connections issues. Infiltration and inflow issues result in stormwater entering the sanitary system, resulting in a diminished capacity of sanitary sewers. Removal of these issues will restore sanitary sewers to their original capacity. The next slide up, page 6, speaks to one of our accomplishments. Of the 4 areas that I just mentioned, the next slide speaks to a summary of our review of our current preventative maintenance procedures. And now I'd like to give the floor to Director Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to speak to, under our accomplishments, preventive maintenance. The first thing that we did was review our current preventive maintenance procedures. In 2018, we cleaned and televised approximately 14.05 miles of sewer. That's about 74,202 linear feet of both sanitary and storm sewers. We have a total of about 51 miles of sanitary sewers, 42 miles of storm sewers. That 93 miles equates to about 70,000 feet. 491,000 linear feet of pipe. On a 7-year basis, we would be cleaning approximately 70,149 feet in order to make sure that all of the pipe I'll start over. In order to ensure that we're on a 7-year cycle addressing all of the, cleaning all of the pipe in the city, we would have to clean approximately 70,149 feet a year. In 2019, we cleaned 74,202 feet, which means that we're slightly ahead of our schedule on a 7-year cycle. In the last year, or just this year, we've cleaned and televised Lotus, East Hill Circle, South Cricket, Crest Hill, Cricket Lane, Ridgeview, John Glenn, East Decker, Long Ridge, and Chestnut. We intend to continue with this over the course of this year, but that is just for the beginning of 2020 so far. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. The next area we reviewed was our stormwater control measures. And for this section, I'm going to give the floor to our city engineer, Dan Collins.
Thank you very much, Mayor. To begin with, the engineering department's been working with the Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District on their inspection program that they have to inspect all the citywide stormwater management facilities. And that can be a combination of detention basins, retention basins, and/or bioretention basins. As of now, we have discovered there's 56 stormwater control measures, which is a stormwater management facility that's within the city of Seven Hills. Most of those are privately owned, whether it's by an HOA or a business. There are retention facilities, detention facilities that are owned and operated by the city of Seven Hills. And we're still working with the Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District on determining if these systems are private or if they are public. For the public systems, engineering is going to be preparing a proposal for the city for routine maintenance, where every 2 years, all these city-owned stormwater management facilities will be maintained. And that could be a combination of dredging, making sure all the invasive species are removed, eliminated, and also paying attention to the outlet control structure, which controls stormwater flows during excessive stormwater events. And of course, looking for any erosion or scouring issues that may present itself over time on these basins. Okay, the next bullet point is that the city that is contracted with AECom, our engineering consultant, to perform an engineering analysis of the Calvin Park Somerset Lane retention basin. We know that there's really not an overtopping issue with that facility. However, as time goes on, we're witnessing a lot of sediment being washed into the retention basin that is starting to change the hydraulics of this facility. We definitely are aware that the inlet stream that's in line with the basin is experiencing continuing erosion, and it's adding unnecessary, unwanted sediment to this basin, possibly then causing inadequate capacity issues. And we're taking a proactive approach on that by having this analyzed and making sure that the outlet control structure is also functioning, while at the same time we have plans to eliminate or minimize the amount of sediment that's being washed into the retention basin. So that's a study that's currently going to be undertaken by AECom. Okay. As far as there's a publicly owned detention basin known as the Waxbury Detention Basin, and we have the city has sought out three prices for dredging and for restoring the stream bed. That again, this is an inline basin to help it function properly. And the mayor later on in the presentation will be perhaps mentioning the lowest and best proposal that we feel needs to be awarded to, so we can get this basin taken care of as soon as possible. Okay, and the last bullet point on page 7 here is that the mayor alluded to this before, is that we coordinated with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District to in their project to restore the natural floodplain on Donna Rain Forest Overlook. So far, there's been 4 homes that have been demolished, with 3 more being scheduled. I believe there's around 11 to I think 12 or 13 homes that are ideal, that are going to be raised to restore the natural floodplain in that area. And the sewer district has presented information on this project at previous council meetings and at public works meetings. And of course, there's further information as this project goes on that we can provide to the public. So that's about it, Mayor. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you, Dan. If I can remind everyone, for the convenience of people viewing at home, please speak closely to the microphone so all that we have is audible. We have a few items I just noted, we'll dive into them a little deeper later, where the price tags can be into the hundreds of thousands. So to protect the city and our investment, the stage we're in is engineering analysis. So just to put it out for bid is one thing, but before we do that, we want to have an engineering study performed to make sure what we are bidding is going to get the best return for the city and protect the residents' investment. So I just kind of wanted to set the table that the engineering and due diligence comes before coming to council to request funds of that amount. So, and that's kind of how I've tried to lead ever since I've been on council, is you engage the experts that are qualified to make these opinions and do this research and act upon the best advice available. And that'll be a consistent theme throughout the presentation and throughout all of our maintenance, upgrades, and storm facility rehabilitation. So I won't repeat it, but it should be obvious that we want to be careful and do this for the long term, and none of this was done knee-jerk, and as always, will be based on the advice of experts. We're now moving on to slide 8. Slide 8 speaks to some of our accomplishments in the third area of focus, which was improving and repairing the city's existing storm and sanitary sewers. For this section, I'll give the floor back to Director Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the first items that we've completed was we took all of the data that was received from residents' calls, and we compiled that into the 2019 and 2020 flooding GIS map to identify some of the problematic areas within the city. We have also completed jetting and documenting two 24-inch culvert pipes at the dead end of Hickory Lane to try to identify the bottleneck that is impacting the neighborhoods upstream. We hope that this will help some of the backup that's occurring in the Crest Hill area. This year, we've also completed the relining of the sanitary sewers on John Glenn and replaced the laterals as needed. We've, in addition to that, installed a flow meter at the intersection of John Glenn and Winchester to measure the effectiveness of that repair. The area previously was identified as having a higher rate of sewer-related issues, and since the repairs have been completed, we've had 2 heavy rain events without a report of flooding. We've also completed, in conjunction with that relining of approximately 270 linear feet of 18-inch sanitary sewer on Rangeview. Rangeview in this particular area was one of our consistent problematic areas, and we anticipate that with the relining of that 18-inch sewer that's one of the problem areas that goes away. We've also prepared a proposal and obtained cost for 2 additional catch basins and replacing a significant amount of curb on Donna Ray in the area leading to, or Ala and Donna Ray, in the area leading to Ala, where we have a significant amount of downhill flooding. We hope to accomplish that very shortly. In addition, we've applied to the county's 50/50 program for the Chestnut Road resurfacing, which would include replacing curbs and catch basins, and we're hopeful for that project. Those are just some of the things that we've done so far to address the subject of improving and repairing our sewers.
Thank you, Director Johnson. We may talk about this a little later because we have a proposal for ALA. But Director Collins, is anything you might want to add a little background depth to the last 2 bullet points, or repairs on ALA, and why we applied for the 50/50 program?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Ala Drive, as it heads eastbound, is a pretty significant hill, as most of you probably are aware of. And as you're traveling east, there's a road, Donna Ray Drive, that heads north off of it. Well, when the original subdivision was installed, there was a lack of catch basins that were installed at that intersection. So what's happening is that a lot of rainwater sheet flow on the street is running down that hill on Ala Drive. Some of it continues to go to the east on Ala Drive, but a lot of the water diverts to the north going down Donna Ray Drive. Well, there's 3 properties there right off Donna Ray. And anytime the rainwater, when we get these excessively, heavy rainfalls, when you get, 1 inch to 3 inches of rain within an hour, rides down that curb. The curb is a little shallow there due to the past resurfacing project that that the city conducted maybe 7 years ago or so, or even more. The curb isn't as defined as it probably should be. It's one of those type 3A rolled curbs. where ideally it should be probably a type 6 curb that, has 6 inches of reveal on it that can contain that drainage. Well, the condition right now is that there, over the past, probably 7, 8 years or more, we've gotten complaints from those 3, 4 residents on Donna Ray Drive that water is jumping the curb and it's washing to the fronts of their properties, entering their garage and their trench drains in front of their homes. So, excuse me. So our solution is to replace the rolled curbs along the east side of Donna Ray Drive with type 6 barrier curbs. Okay, and then also at the same time, it's going to have a big effect on collecting that water and intercepting it before it goes on to the private properties, is to install a set of 2 double catch basins. They're noted as twin 3C catch basins in front of two drive aprons on that hill. And we're anticipating that a combination of the curb replacements along with these double catch basins is really going to intercept a lot of the stormwater flow and preventing it from jumping the curb and going onto the private properties. Again, as Mr. Johnson had mentioned and the mayor had mentioned, we'll be talking about that towards the end of the presentation. We did solicit to, I think it was 5 contractors, and 3 quotes did come in. So we want to recommend the lowest and best award to get going on this project as soon as possible. The next is the Chestnut Road 50/50 program that Mr. Johnson alluded to. And this is an annual program where the city has the ability to apply for funding on its county roads in the city. And Chestnut Road is indeed a county road. And we applied for this, I believe it was towards the end of last year. And we have yet to hear back from the county on that. A lot of cities are indeed waiting for this program to be released on what projects are going to be funded. Back in March, it was March 29th when we had that significant storm event.
Excuse me, somebody has their microphone on. That's creating a lot of interference.
Those at home, please mute your phone if you're not speaking, because the feedback's coming from the teleconference line, not in the room. Please mute your line. Thank you. Sorry, Dan.
It's okay, thank you. So back in March, I think it was March 29th when we had that significant storm event, Chestnut Road experienced some further damage to it. It basically was experiencing some undermining underneath the curbs and underneath the edge of the asphalt. And I was out there and I documented it with photography, and I did submit this information to the county that just further kind of promotes our case that Chestnut Road needs some work done to it. So we're waiting on the results from the county on releasing the 50/50 program for this year, and we're hopeful that that's going to be successful for Seven Hills this year, and if not this year, perhaps next year. And that's basically in a nutshell, Mayor, those 2 last bullet points on page 8. Give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Director Collins. Next, we're going to move to slide 9, which is a continuation of the improve, repair city's existing storm sanitary sewer topic we introduced in the introduction. We intended this slide to be handed by our consultant, Scott Bells, but he had a conflict with another client of his and was unable to be here today, so I will take this. But we had contracted with AECOM to look at, first of all, we spoke of preventative maintenance from Director Johnson. We compiled all the data that we received from residents in 2019 and 2020. And one of the areas that we identified was off of East Ridgewood, the East Ridgewood, the Bayberry subdivision over there. And AECOM completed mainline dye testing, closed-circuit television video inspection of 48 sanitary sewers in that area. structural and operation and maintenance observation, otherwise known as O&M, were recorded. The O&M observations were recorded using AECOM's PACP standards. A total of approximately 11,000 linear feet of sewer were inspected, with dye testing and closed-circuit TV, as I mentioned. The streets where this testing was performed were Bayberry, Bittersweet, Broadview Road, Driftwood, Firethorn, Maryland Lane, Panorama, Primrose, Skyview, St. Marin, Tanglewood, and Waxbury. This area is also subject of an in-depth Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer Department report. And we either mentioned or we will mention the ETA on that report is September. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this area a bit later in the presentation. But that falls into the long-term part of our mission statement. From the testing that AECOM completed on this development area, we were able to identify short-term improvements for Firethorn, Bayberry, and Bittersweet. We expect within a week or two to have estimates to do open cut point repairs and cured in place pipe repairs for these streets. We're going to move on to slide 10. And for slide 10, for the first bullet of our continuing improve repair section, I'm going to hand over the floor to Director Johnson to speak to what we have planned for Cheryl Ann.
Thank you, Mayor. For Cheryl Ann Culvert, we realized that we have some issues that we need to address on that culvert. We got some initial estimates from contractors, and we immediately realized that this was going to be a large dollar item. And because of the large dollar item being involved, we decided to engage professional engineering services to confirm and verify the solution that was going to be provided by the contractor. We are moving forward with that project, and as soon as we've developed the engineering, we hope to be able to make that repair soon. We've prepared plans and completed a bid packet for Skyview. There's a storm sewer outfall there that is beginning to fail. That bid opening is scheduled for August 3rd of 2020. And as soon as we have reviewed the bids, as soon as our engineer, Mr. Collins, has reviewed those bids, we expect that he will make a recommendation, and we will forward that to City Council if approval is necessary to immediately begin repairs on that outfall. We've participated in MCIP call with the Northeast Ohio Sewer District to discuss submitting a plan for a grant application for improvements on East Ridgewood and Crossview. The East Ridgewood Crossview area is the subject of an in-depth review that's being conducted currently by the sewer district. The ETA for the final draft of that report from the sewer district is expected in September of 2020, and we hope that the final draft of that report will provide a basis for identifying exactly what repairs we will have to make in that area.
Thank you. Director Johnson, if I may?
Yes.
Before we move on to the infiltration and inflow, Dan, can you give a little more background on what we're going to do on Skyview, and maybe talk about the grant process and why we've chosen this project to go the grant route.
Sure, thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, the Skyview Drive storm sewer outfall, there's a deteriorated section of an existing 12-inch VCP pipe at the northeast, just northeast of the pavement for Skyview Drive. It actually discharges down a steep hill down to an existing ravine. And that section has experienced, you know, I don't want to call it failure, but it's broken and there's exposed pipe. And it's just kind of was I'll call it maybe a poor design from the original subdivision. Well, what we have done is that we have redesigned that outfall. We're going to be upsizing the 12-inch pipe to a 15-inch RCP, which is reinforced concrete pipe. And we're going to be softening the pipe slope by installing 2 storm manholes, and that allows us to soften the storm sewer pipes more like a step system rather than a full-blown, you know, a slope, which was around over 20%, I believe. We're going to be installing pipes that are at 2.8% and around 5.11%, and that's going to allow the stormwater just to kind of, you know, articulate downstream a little further, or actually down the storm sewer system before it gets to the existing channel. We're also going to be providing obviously some rock outlet protection within the drainage channel to prevent future erosion, and we're going to redefine the channel a little bit beyond that point. Like Mr. Johnson says, that project is currently under bid, and the bid opening is going to be on August 3rd of this year. Okay, regarding the next project with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District MCIP program, we were ready to go to submit this application, but as we met with them, you know, I met with the sewer district, we soon found that we weren't quite ready to apply for a project of this order of magnitude. This is probably one of the hot areas in the city for backups for basement flooding is the East Ridgewood Crossview Road area, and there's a significant amount of studying that still has to be done, which, you know, Mr. Johnson alluded to. We're going to be getting this final report from the sewer district in around September of this year. That information is going to be critical for us moving forward on what options that we're going to have. There's probably about 3 or 4 different options that we know can be performed to help with basement flooding in that area. It's not going to be a cheap ticket price, unfortunately, and that's why we're relying on this Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District's MCIP funding for this. And it may even be phased, just because the price tag could get high. We may take it on, it may be a 2-3 phase project, but that's to be determined. And once we get this final report in 2020, it's going to help us, the engineering department, in conjunction with AECOM, our engineering consultant, in preparing a competitive application for the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District's MCIP program. And we will be applying in 2021 for 2022 funding. And we're pretty confident that, you know, with the information we're going to be receiving, that we're going to be able to submit a competitive application. So I think that covers it, Mayor.
Thank you, Dan. Back to you, Director Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Another one of accomplishments that this task force has accomplished that that I'm very excited about is that we've had conversations with Cuyahoga County Department of Public Works, and we'll be shortly rolling out a new program to residents to address their I&I or cross-connection issues. How the program will work is if a resident agrees to participating in the program, we will have the county come out and smoke test every drain and all of the downspouts in the house. We have some estimated costs of what that's going to cost us by the county. It's very reasonable. They will be dye testing to the manholes, to the test tees. If we have difficulty, our guys will locate the test tees. If test tees are not in place, we will have them installed to ensure that we're doing the test properly. And once we've discovered what the issue is, if the issue is on city property, we will immediately address that issue. If the issue is on private property, we're going to give residents a certain amount of time to make those corrections on private property. They will be working with the building department and the engineering department because they have to, first of all, apply for a permit in the building department. The engineering department will have to review that. So they will be working with both of those departments to ensure that the repairs are made as they should be. And finally, we are also exploring through the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District and other entities ways to assist residents in financing those repairs if financing is an issue. So we're excited about that program and we're looking forward to rolling it out shortly.
Thank you, Director Johnson. That's an important piece of any sewer plan is addressing the I&I, and I just want to note that this program would be voluntary, but if you're really having an issue, this is the way to get down to it. The county will come in, provide us with the test results, and wherever the situation / problem lay, it's going to be fixed. If it's on the city side, we're going to do our part, and vice versa. But on that voluntary program. Moving on to slide 11, we have a number of items in progress. And right now, for the first couple, I'd like to give the floor to Pete Boyd of the West Creek Conservancy, who's joining us via teleconference today. Pete, are you with us?
I am.
Floor is yours.
Yeah, so we've had some success in the past in establishing community-wide rain garden bioscope programs, mainly over in the Parma area, over off of Klusner and Park Haven. And I was looking at the possibility of possibly doing something here to kind of take some of the pressure off of our infrastructure and really, get some community buy-in on it and whatnot. But this is still in the very early stages of kind of brainstorming and how we might be able to pull that in. But some of the success that we've had in numbers, we've had a 40% reduction off of Klusner over in Parma, the stormwater going into the storm sewer, which is a pretty good hit just for putting in some curb cut rain gardens. The other bullet point that's on here is exploring the restoration of the Drexel retention basin and watershed, which is the stream that goes from Calvin Park on the south end down south of Drexel and then over to Donna Ray and goes north from there, and it gets daylighted before it hits Cheryl Ann on the other side of the stream. And there's some issues, as it were, with some erosion problems. There's a basin there, and there's a couple other stormwater things that we're looking at, but there's opportunities for possible restoration dollars and things looking down the road. So we're continuing that analysis to see what we might be able to do.
Thank you, Pete. It was a little garbled, but if there's, we'll have a point for some Q&A coming up real short. If we had trouble understanding what Mr. Boyd said, or of course questions on anything that the administration's presented to this point, is coming up real quick. The next thing in progress, we've been working diligently to identify potential revenue sources to address public and private sewer issues. Just like anything that approaches city government, it's easy to say, hey, fix this, or identify a problem or something you think is a problem. It's a whole other ballgame to figure out how to pay for it. So we've been very diligently looking at, we already talked about the MCIP grant. We've been in touch with the sewer district, Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, about, they have a program where we can borrow against future community cost share if we come across a big project, and laying out the groundwork for that if that's needed. In addition, we're working with the DEFA office, that's DEFA, it's a Department of the Ohio EPA that also provides funding for public and private issues at the municipal level. So just as important in identifying and teeing up the projects is teeing up the funding and what's going to get us over the goal line there. The next item up, just briefly talk about it because Director Collins mentioned earlier, he is working on a proposal for the long-term management of the city-owned stormwater facilities. Our goal here is going to be maintenance going forward on all facilities that the city owns every other year. We've also been putting together information for a virtual public meeting. That's not necessarily just this meeting, but we're talking about public education here. And we've also acquired a number of materials we're going to be putting on in conjunction with that virtual meeting on the city website about educating the public on how the system works and things they can do and the resources available. Next up, I'm going to give the floor back to Dan Collins, our engineer. Give a brief update on our Hemlock Creek watershed project, which is an important component of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As most know, the Hemlock Creek Watershed Utility Improvement Project is complete, and we have, many residents who've already applied for permit applications and actually have connected to the new public sanitary sewer that's installed over at the Hemlock Creek project. And that's going to continue to, to move forward, and we're hoping the majority of the residents do indeed have their septic systems abandoned and connected to the new public sanitary sewer within the time frame that's deemed and required by the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. But afterwards, there's going to be 300 properties now that have or that will be tied into the new public sanitary sewer. Okay, so we surely are hoping that when residents do make the connection into the sanitary sewer, that no stormwater from their homes, whether it's their roof drainage or their foundation drainage, is indeed tied into their sanitary lateral that is getting into the sanitary sewer. As everyone knows, rainwater should not be getting into any sanitary sewer, especially with today's standards. With the pipe material that's out there, there's really no reason that stormwater can and should get into the sanitary sewers, but where would be happening is that from the dwelling itself, from the house, some of the connections could be routed to the sanitary sewer, which before was connected to the septic systems. Residents are supposed to be checking with their contractor to have that reviewed before they do actually connect to the sanitary sewer. And with the combination of our building department making inspections and also then the contractor diligently connecting to the sanitary sewer, we would hope that would happen. But things sometimes unfortunately do not happen. So what we are going to be contracting with AECom is once all the homes are indeed connected to the new public sanitary sewer, we'll be engaging AECom to install flow monitoring systems throughout the neighborhood to determine the effectiveness of the improvements and to measure the flow and the capacity of the sewers. And we should be able to pinpoint, if there are indeed any houses that are adding stormwater to the sanitary sewer. And like Mr. Johnson had mentioned before, perhaps then that county program will be necessary to perform some actual additional flow testing in that area, and so actually dye testing in that area, to find out what homes, need to be corrected. We, again, and everyone knows, again, rainwater is not to get it in any sanitary sewers. That's not what those sanitary sewers are designed for. The capacity, typically on sanitary sewers are a lot smaller than they are to storm sewers. storm sewers carry a lot more flows, you know, due to our storm events. The sanitary flows aren't as demanding as rainwater, so that's basically a summary on the Hemlock project, Mayor.
Thank you, Dan. I'll point out that the data that we had gathered from residents certainly show a higher rate of incident of water-related activities in the Hemlock area. Okay, we identified that. I asked of my technical advisors, what can we do immediately here? And the technical advisors said it's prudent to wait till a majority or all the tie-ins complete, because then we'll be testing the sanitary when it's at its full amount of homes tied in, and whatever other repairs are related to, on a smaller basis, to storm. So when we begin our testing, we're going to be testing a stable environment, the environment that we hope is going to be the long-standing environment, and that's the due diligence there that's required to go forward. So just want to let our people know that we understand there's issues there. But it's more, we talked about short-term and long-term. This one's a little bit of a medium one. The tie-ins get complete. We're going to contract for testing that will measure the flow and the capacity of the current system. And with that data, we'll then be able to make educated decisions on what the next move is. Okay? Last bullet on the in-progress section is bid packages and/or estimates are being prepared for everything we spoke of. We have a few items that are ready to roll today. We'll talk about at the very end. But another handful are going to be ready within 1 to 4 weeks. The ones that are on the come, the majority of them will be going through, we'll have to come back to either Public Works, and most undoubtedly, the majority of them will go through the Council's Finance Committee as well to approve the funds. And to wrap things up today, and we'll try to get through this conclusion pretty quick. And we have a Q&A period. In conclusion, today's presentation is just the start of what will be our ongoing efforts to remediate this long-standing issue. It's important to note that nothing humans can make will be able to completely stop what Mother Nature creates. The task force has hopefully created what will be the blueprint going forward. The 4 major tenets: preventative maintenance, targeted sewer upgrades, upgrade our stormwater control facilities, and identify and correct public and private I&I/cross connections. Today we touched on all of the above, at least in a small way, and much more. But fully understand these efforts need to be ongoing and long-term to achieve the results we're all hoping for. So thank you again, Public Works, for allowing us to go through this lengthy presentation. But it is a complex issue, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't leave, at least in our initial volley, any stones unturned. So I'll open it up to, I'll give it back to Councilman Kuliu, and if you can take the floor on the Q&A.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions, and I know there was a couple that were listed in here as far as funding goes or grants. The MCIP was one. I think what the end, the other one was that you had in there. What is it? Can we get what's the acronym for the MCIP? Does anybody know what that?
Dan knows.
That's the,
Not to put you on the spot.
I was looking for something else really quick here.
That's okay.
I have it in my notes if you don't get to it quickly.
Yeah. Gosh, I should be giving an instant answer on that. Municipal, pardon me really quick here.
That's okay.
It's the, it stands for Member Community Infrastructure Program. Okay, and it's basically, I forget exactly how many communities there are in, like, mainly Cuyahoga County, but there are some in Summit County. it's the service area that the Northeast Iowa Regional Sewer District serves. So they open up all these communities for so much money per year for projects that typically involve stormwater or making the environment more, friendly for.
More friendly, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
prevent stormwater pollution and.
Okay. And then also the grant application through the NEORSD, is that the same thing, the MCIP, is that that's the same thing?
It is.
Okay,
Yes.
are there other avenues that we're seeking? Is there anything else that we can seek, that you guys know of as far as funding for some of these projects?
Yeah, there's also our through the sewer district, we have the approximately around $200,000 a year we get, and that's part of the the community cost share. Excuse me. Thank you, Director Johnson. And
Community cost share?
community cost share, yeah, and there's certain projects that qualify under that program, and at any time, the city can use that money. And I believe we purchased for instance, our street sweeper with that funding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, and the mayor alluded to before, that program, you can actually borrow years in advance if you have a big project coming up. You can borrow 5 years ahead, knowing what you're getting each year if you have a big significant project up and coming. But we don't want to drain that account completely. We want to have that almost like a slush fund or a emergency rainy day fund.
Emergency
for
fund,
that,
correct,
yeah,
yeah.
when we really need it.
Yeah.
We use some of that funding also for the Hemlock project to restore some of the excessive Nemeth Drive curbs that were deteriorated. That qualified because it was part of the storm sewer system, draining that road properly. That's another project we used for that. So, and then they have their service area that it's part of their asset system that they automatically take care of. And like we talked about earlier, that Donna Ray Drive Forest Overlook project, that's being fully funded by the Northeast Iowa Regional Sewer District with the property acquisitions and actually all the engineering design that goes behind it, all the legal fees, eventually construction of that. That's all fully funded. They are going to be also assisting us somewhat with the Sherland Driveway, the Sherland Drive culvert rehabilitation that we're working on right now. We were told this about a week and a half ago that there's some funding that they're gonna help us out with that. Not fully, but some of it. And that was good news that we heard that.
You said the Donner project was going to be fully funded by
No. Yeah, that's okay. No, the Donna Ray Forest Overlook project where they're buying homes from people and they're raising them and they're restoring the floodplain in that area. That's being fully funded. That project.
I don't have any further questions at this time. Anybody else on the committee have anything that they'd like to ask or talk about? Tom?
I want to thank everybody that's been involved in this. I quietly started getting into trouble a while ago about stormwater and surface flooding, and it's nice to know that the mayor listened to me. And I appreciate this an awful lot, because we've had issues with flooding for a long time afterwards. And these 100-year floods, they now seem to come every 2 or 3 years. So I want to thank everybody on the committee and the mayor especially. A lot of this is going to take place in Ward 3, and it's needed, and it's overwhelmingly appreciated. I'm intimately aware of all of these issues, especially in my ward. And it's just good to see that we're looking at some long-term improvements and taking care of this. I know that the folks on Don Ray and Allen at that corner are going to be overwhelmingly happy because we improved the road and it certainly exacerbated their infiltration problem with the water coming downhill into their house. And Cheryl and Colbert, it's great. That's all I can say about it. That's, that you guys are taking the bull by the horn. You're trying to be proactive. You're looking ahead. You're trying to get some stuff done. And it won't happen immediately, but at least we're looking at getting the game plan here. So thank you very much. I had one question. It was great that we finally got a look inside those 2.4-inch culvert pipes on the south side of Hickory Lane. Is that detention basin, or I don't know whether it's a detention or a retention basin? Is that detention basin at the end of Hickory Lane going south? Is that on the list? Is that one of the ones that you're including to look at? Because I know that probably 8-9 years ago now, Stuart Levis had that dug out, and it seemed to solve some of the problems for a short period of time. So is that also on the list?
I'll answer all the city-owned ones we're getting to. We started with the largest and the ones that were in proximity to, our mapping.
That's my question.
So,
I'm not sure if it's city-owned, if CPI owns it, I just don't know what the status is.
well, why don't follow up offline with Director Johnson, and we'll identify where it falls. As also noted, if it's not city-owned, we worked with kind of the soil and water to make sure maintenance letters were sent out. So it's the vast,
CPI, I'm not sure.
understood, so it's going to get addressed one or two ways. If they're,
Like I said, this is great. This is great. It's very good work. Nice to see the game plan, and I, speaking for the residents of Ward 3, thank you for the things you've done that will directly affect us. That's it. Thank you.
Councilman Curriasis, any questions or comments?
I have no questions. I just want to thank Director Collins and Director Johnson and the mayor for putting this together, and everybody else on the committee. And I especially want to thank Director Collins and Johnson for every time I call them and have any questions about this, they always enlighten me with answer my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd also like to thank Engineer Collins and Director Johnson as well. I've sat in at a few of the sewer meetings with you guys, and I, as I told you guys before and spoke with you guys before, I had no idea how involved storm sewers and sanitary sewer systems were. I mean, you always think, okay, well, water just runs down the pipe or sanitary goes down the pipe, and you're not really thinking about the long-term effects or how the ripple effect per se of things that are involved with the city. So I'd like to thank you guys a lot. There's a lot of hard work that's gone into this R&D so far. There's still a lot more work to be done and stuff like that, but my confidence level is very high that you guys will do a great job with it as you've done already. So, and Mayor as well, with your information and help that you've done with all the work with this as well.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recognize the mayor for actually providing the focus on this. The mayor's the one that pulled us all into one room and said, look, we're going to attack this issue. And so I'd like to recognize his leadership in actually providing the focus here.
Duly noted. The mayor, I think, has been a great leader on so far, in my opinion, on everything that's gone on in the city so far, and looking forward to all the great things that he will bring forward to the city in the future as well. Mayor Biassiota.
thank you, Chairman, thank you, Director. Do you want to open it up? We have a few council people and represent other partners on the phone.
Anybody else have any further questions at this time in the audience or people who are teleconferencing?
Hey, it's Norm Martin.
Yeah, Councilman Martin.
Thank you. Hey, just want to thank the administration and staff and for Tony and the engineer for all the good work. It really is. It's always good to have a plan in order to have a good budget for good execution. So looks like we're on a path. This is an age-old problem. It's not a problem that developed 1 or 2 years ago. It's a problem that's been around for 20 years and 30 years in some cases. So can't get it all done at one time, but I sure do appreciate the effort to get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else have any comments or
I'd just like to
questions?
thank Councilman Martin for noting that. And some of these instances go back 20 or 30 years. So, like I noted in the conclusion, this is just the beginning. And anyone in the community that wants to portray it differently and is watching or listening would be portraying it falsely. That we're laying out a blueprint, acting on the advice of experts, and there's short terms we identified and we're going to talk about once we're done with the Q&A. There's more short terms that'll come to council for funding within a month or less. And then as we get later in the year, we're going to talk about the medium and long term when we get the results of the sewer report and other flow testing that we're doing. So anything we do is going to be based upon quantifiable facts and research, not innuendo.
Thank you, Mayor. Also, too, just a little comment I'd like to make as well. I haven't been a city resident as long as a lot of people here have. I've had friends that have been here for years and have complained about sanitary and sewer and stuff like that. And it's easy to kind of sidestep things, issues, or problems that are going on. But, you know, when sooner or later it comes to the point where you have to tackle the problem, I don't think this mayor and this council is afraid of this problem. Now, they're maybe afraid of the cost of things, but sooner or later, at some point in time, the city needs to address these problems, I believe, and that's what's going on right now. So I'm looking forward to the challenge, I think, as the rest of the administration and council and the mayor are looking forward to that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, you may, Mayor.
We have 3 items we'd like to get passed through the committee today. So they'll be ready for whenever the next finance meeting is.
Okay.
The first, we have a proposal to perform the engineering on the Kelvin Park / Somerset Basin. Dan, can you give this high-level summary and what the potential cost is? And note, we're on a tight schedule. The room is needed at 4:15.
Yeah, the Calvin Park Somerset engineering proposal is gonna be is being submitted by AECom, who's gonna be studying this area. It's gonna be a not to exceed $37,500 fee, but we're gonna lower that. We've had some vast discussions with our partners with West Creek Conservancy and also AECom's wetland scientist, and we don't feel like a full wetlands report needs to be delineated on that. So we're still in final discussions on what that proposal is going to be, but for right now it'll be a not to exceed $37,500 fee for AECom to perform their hydraulic modeling, their studying, and survey of the Calvin Park Somerset retention basin.
Okay. So bringing it to committee, we'd like to vote on the not to exceed, I think it's 37.5 on the Calvin Park Somerset Lane Basin.
Yeah, that's for the engineering.
For the engineering part of this this
It'll
task.
be performed by AECom, 37.5, not to exceed. It's going to come in not lower than that, but we want to make sure we don't.
Want to try to cover the bases.
We'd
Yeah.
rather be conservative with the estimate.
Okay.
So,
So all in favor? Councilman Curriasis,
Aye. Yes.
Councilman Snitsky, and Councilman Cooley votes aye as well.
okay, the next item up we'd like to bring to the committee is work we want to have done on Waxbury Basin. Director Johnson, can you give the high level on that and the cost?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we engaged a company to do some calculations as to how much sediment needed to be removed from the basin. We solicited prices from contractors. We were successful in receiving 3 prices, and we will be recommending, although it doesn't really require, it's within the mayor's, we believe will be in the mayor's realm of authority, but we do want to notify council that it should not exceed $12,500.
Okay, thank you, Director Johnson.
We have one more that we'd like to run by the committee this evening.
Okay.
You want to make a motion on that one first?
You want to make a motion on that first, or?
Sure.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to pass the Waxbury Basin. Is that an engineering task there?
No, Chairman, this is actually to perform the duties.
Perform the duty of the Waxbury Basin for $12,500.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a second. All in favor? Councilman Curriasis?
Yes.
Councilman Snitsky?
Aye.
Councilman Kuyu, aye.
I think we need to know too that that's within the mayor's signing authority, but I think.
Yeah, but
The fact that I think we want to support it, and I think that was.
Yeah, that shows our support through the Public Works committee, so, yeah.
Thank you. It's part of the bigger picture. So I didn't want to do some of the sewer stuff in a vacuum, now that we have information to act upon. And the work, just real quick, for the less than 13,000, I forgot the exact amount. This is going to be for the dredging, disposal, and stream bed restoration of the Waxbury Detention Basin. We have one more we'd like to bring to council's attention this afternoon, and that's we talked about it pretty in-depth earlier today. That's the work on ALA for the double catch basins and select curbs to route the water better. And Dan Collins, if you could speak to that. And we will need a motion after this because it exceeds my authority.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Engineer Collins. What was the amount on that, Mayor?
I'm going to defer to Dan. It's like 42,000.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mayor. Yes, we solicited, as I said before, to 5 contractors. We did receive 2 bids, and we are recommending the lowest and best bid to Set in Stone Contracting in the amount of $41,622. 41622.
Okay, and that, you had 5 contractors and you accepted 2 bids, Engineer Collins?
We received 2 bids out of the 5 that we solicited to, correct?
Okay, you received, okay, thank you.
Yep. And by the way, if it matters, that includes a 5% contingency.
Good.
Thank you, Engineer. So I'd like to put a motion on the floor. I'd like to make a motion on the floor for the $41,622 on the Donna Ray and Ala project proposal.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, Councilman Curriasis?
Aye.
Councilman Snitsky?
Aye.
Councilman Kuyu, aye. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you, Chairman. That's all we have, sir.
That's all you have this evening? Okay, so with that being stated, we were going to try and make this a 4 o'clock target to get out of here. So if nobody else has any further questions, or there's no other further information at this time, I'd like to close Public Works at 4:10. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Just in time because my